Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. My name is Shaitan Atigari. Good morning.
I just wanted to go straight in.
Yes, definitely. Let's start with this. Last week, the Senate rose from a 6-hour debate on the spike in insecurity in Nigeria with a call to President Muhammadu Buhari to declare a national security emergency in the country.
The worrisome security situation also engaged the attention of the House of Representatives, which at plenary on Wednesday unanimously demanded the resignation of service chiefs for suboptimal performance. The House requested the President to sack them if they fail to heed the call to resign.
The lawmakers also promised to enact laws to give legal support to the Southwest Security Initiative, Amotekun, which means leopard, and similar outfits that may be set up by states. It's also summoned the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Mohammed Adamu, to appear before it at plenary on Wednesday next week to discuss the modus operandi of the introduction of community policing in the country. Well, joining us now to discuss the call for the resignation of service chiefs by the National Assembly of Nigeria is retired Nigerian Colonel Hassan Stan-Labo.
Army Colonel, I should say. But before we get into the discussion proper, let's take a look at this report put together by State House correspondent Agosa Egumbo on the first council of the year meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari in Abuja.
The Nigerian media has been awash with reports of kidnappings, armed banditry and insurgency in the last few weeks. Sadly, the situation doesn't appear to be getting any better. And now the popular belief is that the security architecture may have failed.
We did not elect the Joint Chiefs, we did not elect the National Security Advisor. When you want to deal with a matter, you go to the head. So we will go to the government and ask this government to resign because they can no longer do anything in this country.
The security situation is like a graph. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it comes down. And that is why we have to assess it periodically. It can never remain level till we bring the whole situation to an end. Sometimes it could escalate, sometimes it will come down.
The quarterly meeting of the National Security Council is convened to appraise the current situation. The meeting comes 24 hours after the National Assembly x-rayed Nigeria's security issues. Their resolution was a call for the complete change of military hierarchy and strategy. But from all indications, that may not be happening soon.
No, we didn't discuss that. That's not something that I want to reveal now. So let's leave that. The most important thing that we came up with was the need for collaboration both between governmental agencies and the larger Nigerian society because of the nature of the type of insurgency we're faced with, the complexities, the multiplicity of all kinds of issues. There's a need for both parties, governmental agencies on the one hand, and the wider society to collaborate.
President Buhari has had cause to complain about the unbearable security situation. This perhaps informs the directive to the Security Council to collaborate vigorously with all citizens. The National Security Advisor says the challenge is multidimensional and requires a multifaceted approach.
The issue of security in the context of the 21st century is not an issue of just arms and ammunition or robbers and gangsters. It's a multiple situation. The canvas is very, very extensive, and we're looking at it in a comprehensive manner.
As government continues to find the best approach to insecurity, more Nigerians appear to be losing faith, with arguments that the military may be overwhelmed by the complexities of the new security trend. Agosa Egumbo, Arise News.
All right, great to be right back right here. You heard that wonderful report there from Agosa Egumbo. We have retired Army Colonel Hassan Stan-Labo. It's a joy talking to you this morning, sir.
Thanks so much.
The president has constantly expressed surprise at the magnitude of the security challenge in this country. Can the commander-in-chief express surprise at the state of security breach?
Well, if I don't want to say he was misquoted, because I think we all had him, and rather, I would want to ascribe it to the fact that probably he has, or he's not properly well briefed by his subordinates, his lieutenants, those around him, who should keep him in constant touch about developments. But then somebody might want to quickly ask, but even if it's not brief, does it not go through newspapers? Does it not listen to the news? And so on and so forth. I can agree at that level, there is so much for him to do. But there is what we call this executive summary. I remember even as a bloody lieutenant, I did executive summary for my commanding officer in those days. You know, you just, if you cannot even bring it out, you draw his attention to certain parts in the newspapers and so on. So as your boss opens, he goes to where you have earmarked and reads through and things like that. These are the sort of things I expect for Mr. President. So if he has this type of attention, well fed with information, I don't think he will make such statements.
Now, the National Assembly has called for a national security emergency, and of course, like we saw in that VT, a call for the sacking of all the service chiefs. Now, my question to you is, do you subscribe with this train of thought? Should we be looking preferably to another solution?
My dear, it's neither here nor there. Because first and foremost, a mere sack or change in the leadership guard, all right, to me, without really addressing some of the deficits on ground, might not really give us the sort of result we want. Except if we're thinking you're bringing in individuals who just wave some magic wand and you begin to see things happen. These are not Jesus Christ and Muhammad. They are human beings like us.
What are some of these deficits? So what are some of these deficits? Exactly.
Of course, the usual deficits we've always talked about. Deficits in funding, manpower, logistics and equipment, training, welfare, and of course now, I often add this, international support.
You see, a lot of people argue with you, and if you were to get an insight from the military, they'll say, in terms of welfare, funding, and logistics, we have enough. If you look at the past 5 years, security has been taking a larger chunk in our budget. In fact, as of the years we had the Niger Delta impasse, most of the budget was going to security in this country. Correct me if I'm wrong, cumulatively in the last 10 years, we'll have done in the trillions of security funding. We bought the Super Toscano, we're getting new jets and the likes. A lot of people say there's adequate funding. So what is the problem?
Let me start by saying this. You don't fund an army when it's at war. That's belated funding. You equip and enhance the capacity of your inventory at peacetime. Why? Because the bulk of the wares you are trying to buy are never there on the shelves. You talked about Tucano. Have they been supplied to you? But you've spent nearly $1 billion on that. That is it. And we're not expecting it maybe in another 1 or 2 years. Good. So it means whatever role the Tucano was supposed to play has not changed. The situation remains what it is.
But we still have the AK jets.
Yes, of course. There are other aircrafts that we'll still have that will fall back to and so on. All right? And of course, those ones are doing the best they can do. Like it is now, the situation in the battlefield, like I read it, is the game change now, as far as I'm concerned, rests with the air power. Okay? And that is why I was very impressed when the air chief said we were expecting, or he was taking delivery of about 10 helicopters, choppers, combat choppers, that were going to really do a lot of job in the field. Because frankly speaking, we need to enhance on air power now, because that is where the game change really rests with. Okay? With that, we can really cut off supply lines of the enemy. With that, we can really dislocate headquarter locations and so on, and keep the headquarter running. When you keep the headquarter running, it does not give enough room for the insurgents to be able to plan properly for you.
I mean, you have mentioned all of these things. However, some would say that there has been a lack of fresh ideas when it comes to tackling insurgency. And if we look at the time period in which these service chiefs were elected, by 2017, they should have stepped out of office. And now we're in 2020, and we're still seeing them. So there are these other deficits. But if we look at the leadership of these service chiefs, are you confident in what they have done so far?
One, I am impressed with their performance, because when you cast your mind back to when they came in 2015 and what they did on ground, about 16 local government areas in about 4 states of this country were under the administrative control of Boko Haram. we were able to recover these territories back. That's a big plus for them. I must give it to them.
Okay.
Fine, we have come a long way to a point whereby a lot of re-strategizing has taken place, both in the enemy camp and in our own camp. But we now realize that whatever we have done so far on ground is just not enough yet to give us the winning edge which we expect, irrespective of all the degrading that we have done on the enemy side. If on the basis of that somebody is saying that, don't you think they've run out of ideas and so on? Well, we may not say they've run out of ideas, but I think I want to subscribe to the idea that maybe fresh hands being brought on board, all right, are likely to come on board with some other fresh thinking, innovations, and so on, which probably cannot see the day today because of this, the present occupants, you know, yes, and things like that. But all the same, these guys, looking at records, for those of us who have been in service, these are one of the finest, they make one of the finest set of service chiefs we have had in the military. The Nigerian army has taken a complete new turn under Buratai. I am shocked. When he came in, I did not expect to see this. Frankly speaking, at the initial stage, fine, I knew he was a brilliant officer, but I didn't expect what I was seeing. Today, I am full of his praise. Fine, let them go. But they go with their heads high up, and they go with a lot of clappings from some of us.
So a lot of people will also say, isn't it time, you know, to look inwards in the military and collaborate the efforts? Like you talked about, we have fantastic, you know, soldiers, the likes of Lieutenant General Lamidi Adeosun, you know, that his prowess was celebrated on the battlefield and the likes and things like that. Isn't it a time for, you know, joint efforts? Everybody, you know, having a special think tank rather than, you know, changing the service chiefs. Because when you look at it strongly, it's still a wave. I remember the time when the likes of them, Kenneth Minima just came in, there was a big wave, and the likes of them here, Jirika, and afterward they fizzled out at some point like that. So it's not just rejigging and re-engineering the lot they have, rather than just changing the service chiefs.
That's why initially I said it's neither here nor there, frankly speaking. All right? But like, you know, with the command and control structure in the military at times, you don't talk too much about a think tank. He could have his in-house team made up of eggheads, like you've mentioned.
Like Lamidi Adeosun.
Yes, I just don't want to mention names, but there are just so many. The Nigerian army is blessed with fantastic chaps. I can assure you that. Some are my seniors, some are my contemporaries, and so on. We are blessed. We just lack what it takes to do the job.
We'll go on a quick break in 60 seconds. Kaduna-Abuja Expressway, Rigasa, the train station. We'll come back and talk about all of this. You see, because we're saying, yes, they're good input from the military, we have airgats and the likes, but there's massive insecurity on that road. A lot of people say your last prayer, write your will before you travel on that road now. So, you know, I know we've got like 20 seconds to break or thereabout. You just want to start touching the surface of that. What will crack the nut on that road? What will make it even better for us to apply?
Air surveillance patrol, which I think the police can still do also. If you ask me, I don't subscribe to this idea of having the military playing internal security duties.
All right. We'll go on break in about a couple of seconds from now. You said air surveillance patrol.
Yes.
We'll look at that. The military not participating in internal security.
Yes.
That's another big challenge. Other people want to ask, what's the strength of the police force?
Yeah.
We'll be right back after this. Right, we still have Army Colonel, retired Army Colonel Hassan Stan-Labo here, breaking down the insecurity situation in the country. I was saying Kaduna-Abuja Highway, what would be, you said aerial surveillance. Then the next thing you went ahead to say, the military has no role playing a role in internal security, but how capable is the police?
Yeah, and that is the more reason why I think we should be able to equip our police enough, avail them adequate manpower, that is in terms of strength, so that they'll be able to perform their statutory responsibilities as far as internal security duties are concerned, and then the military can fall back to its territorial protection and play what we call second-line security for the police. That is to say, when the police is overwhelmed, that is when now you can bring in the military. But when you have a well-equipped police, both in strength and equipment, you hardly or you seldom have the need to pull out the military. Okay? So we should concentrate, make sure the police is on sound footing, and then start pulling out the military. Thank God the government has said they're already going to pull out the military so that we can have enough strength in the Northeast. Going by my personal estimation, in the Northeast, we need nothing less than 200,000.
200,000 men.
Yes, in terms of the armed forces. Okay? But here we are.
If we look at the Nigerian police force, I mean, during the break, we were kind of looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
And I think we're able to finally agree on the fact that we have about 60,000
troops thereabouts in the country.
In the country, about 350,000 officers in the Nigerian police force, which is still not enough because we are a country of about 200 million people. Now, let's take a look at Amotekun. You know, this is the security outfit that was put together by the governors in that region. And there has been this back and forth about whether it is what we need, community policing. Like you said, the Nigerian police force is overwhelmed. So is this a theory that you agree with? The lawmakers have said, you know what, we are going to enforce a law that lets for regional policing. Can this template work in other parts? And would it help to reduce the spike in insecurity?
I have 100% support for Amotekun. At times it shocks me when I see very responsible citizens, show some form of, let's call it animosity towards Amotekun. I don't see why. The concept is commendable. I mean, this is supposed to be a group or a security arrangement that could work hand in hand with the police, community policing arrangement on ground. All right? If we bear in mind that, look, community arrangements, community policing comes with a great deal of community integration itself and so on. Amotekun just serves as a good synergizing partner to work with them. All right? Look at the role Neighborhood Watch played in Lagos in terms of feeding the police with
intel,
information that gets crystallized into intelligence, and which the police has been using. They have worked tremendously. They have fine, good cooperation and so on. If that can work, why would Amotekun not work?
But let me say here, the leader of Meyete Allah,
yes,
his political angle to it that Amotekun is OPC is secession. There are people that think like that. What's your take on that?
In most cases, at least, I think it's good to disregard some of these comments. It's unfortunate.
Even comments that it's going to affect presidency in 2023.
There is something we need to understand. I think we have two factions in Meyete Allah. We have what I call the reasonable faction, and then we have one faction led by one guy who just opens his mouth anyhow and creates confusion around. Okay, they've been disowned by the reasonable faction. Some of these comments, I'm very sure, comes from that very unreasonable faction. Okay, because sincerely, when you talk with the leadership of the other faction, they sound like people who really genuinely love this country. When you genuinely love this country, for heaven's sake, you would ensure that our fault lines don't often distort your line of thought. Ethnicity, religion, tribe, and so on. Because most Nigerians, once they start commenting on anything national, this is where they begin to look at it. Oh, because he's a Yoruba man. Oh, he's a Hausa Fulani. Oh, he's an Igbo.
But it's
and it distorts your line of thought.
It's so easy to negate those fault lines. I mean, if we are to follow, Chuba Kadibo's template, that if those fault lines still determine your judgment, then your education is a waste. That's a good word by Chuba Kadibo. But it's so easy to say, oh, let's negate the fault line. But those are the fault lines that are prevalent in our country leading up to the elections. These are the fault lines as regards even the security disposition.
We must bury them. If we cannot bury them in our lifetime, I only hope our children will bury them. And thank God, the sort of kids you and I are having today don't see Nigeria the way we are seeing it. I hope you know that.
Yes.
Maybe you play with your kids and see their pronouncements and so on. I know in the next 10 years, my son will be asking me, Daddy, were you part of this mess that brought this Nigeria, that brought this country to this stage? With the way I see him, he would sit me down one day and ask me, what role did you play? Thank God I might have some tapes like this to play for him. Did you voice out or you kept quiet and saw Nigeria being torn into pieces?
You know, so when you think about insecurity in this country, I was having a conversation with a few friends of mine yesterday, and this was one of the reasons why President Muhammadu Buhari was elected in 2015, because the people have confidence in him as a veteran, as a retired general, as someone who was supposed to clamp down insecurity. However, in 2020, we are still seeing these high numbers, and I know we are talking about the sacking of the service chiefs, but I want to just quickly segue into our next conversation, which is the ban of these Okadas in Lagos State. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because when we have a huge number of people that have been put basically out of employment, we begin to see crime rates go up. Now, we're looking at a nation that is trying to put an end to insecurity, but on one end, we are literally increasing crime. I want to know your take on this. What do you think about this ban?
Well, it doesn't seem to go down well with a good number of Lagosians, more so when you look at what pedestrians are suffering on the streets, and so on. For those of us who are a bit privileged to have at least one vehicle which you manage, we don't feel some of these pains. But if you've been down there before, you would know what I'm saying, I only hope that after a period of experiment, maybe the Lagos State government would do a review of this again and see how they can want to amend it. Because I guess there was a time when the present governor was talking about regulating and not outright banning. But in the first place, I hope you know, it has not just been outrightly banned. Yes, the restrictions in certain areas and so on. But all the same, the pains are still there. It could be looked into. Because let's face it, security is not all about just arms and weapons or whatever. Okay, it's all encompassing. Food security, human security, you mentioned it. And when we bring all this to play, then you talk of a impactful or comprehensive security for the citizen.
I want us to quickly segue, back to security and talk about Synergy. The case of Wadume comes to mind. In releasing Wadume, the finest of the Nigerian police force were killed. A certain captain ordered it. There's been investigations on that. We have not seen the end of that. Punishment has not been meted out. We've seen constant fracas between the police and the military. Is this not the problem hampering security?
Partly. And I can only sit here and say, look, I wish there could be better cooperation between the security agencies out there. All right? And when the need arises for joint operations like we've always seen, that is between the military and, say, the police, within a given space, it's only important that the entire procedures are well, adhered to. Because when you look at the Wadume case, you read some elements of, I would say, failure in procedural applications, along the line. And a situation where a headquarters is not aware of something that is taking place below it, and so because of that, a subordinate officer who is on ground is able to assume so much responsibility to himself because he does not owe his superior any form of, what was it called now? So that is it. That was part of the failure. So why the captain was taking full responsibility on ground, applying, I would say, initiatives which he lacked, his headquarters never knew until things got out of hand. I hope there could be better synergy, and this can only come when there is what we call joint training between the services to allow for smooth operations.
But is that something that currently exists? This joint training that you speak of, is it? Because I mean, even looking at security as a whole, one of the things that has come up is the fact that the communication between different security outfits is still lacking. I mean, if we look at the case of al-Baghdad that was, basically gone down, we know that it was this communication between the armed forces and, the naval seals and all of that. But now we don't currently have that in Nigeria, the communication. So you speak about it, and it seems like a good phenomena. But how do we transition into this?
Are you talking about joint training now?
Yes, joint training.
Okay. Some level of joint training takes place, especially at the junior staff college. Okay, but I think a lot more needs to be done because let's face it, how many sessions did we have in most cases? Especially where it concerns quelling of riots and things like that. Mainly internal security duties and so on, And then, of course, we often carry out this drill on how you have to take over from the police and so on. But I think we should expand the scope. We should expand the scope beyond that. Because when you come to the field, you see that at times you have more reasons for yes than what you have.
Colonel Stan-Labo, I'd like to say a very big thank you. And one other thing that will work is interparastatal games. And sports and recreation together.
Which has died down now.
That will help a great deal.
The army.
Yes, well, I'd like to say a football game between the army and the police force. Yeah. And you'll be the referee. Thanks a lot, Colonel Stan-Labo.